we are here to be able to discuss the aspects of how design through inquiry and place-based learning overlap, and we have great tools to share with you. So on that slide over to the side, whenever we have that share, that is directly a link to the slides in case you lose that. And then the Zoom, if you get disconnected and you have the other one, you can join us back at that Zoom link and it'll take you right back here. So as we go through, we'll start off with some of how this is going to work. And then after that, we'll all formally introduce ourselves and we'll begin. So how this is going to work is we have about 60 minutes together. So we're going to try to pay attention to your time and make sure that we kind of get through all of the tools because we have quite a few to share with you. We have a bunch of resources, strategies, and different types of methodologies to be able to help with this design-based learning, as well as our place-based learning and designing through inquiry. So, and we hope that all of them are right away implementable. So we have like a basis of some big things that can go into your classroom, but also some very big like tools that go straight in and don't take a whole lot of time investment up front. So I am Nicholas Linke. I'm with eMINTS. I am in education or from 7th to 12th grade formally. And now I am an eMINTS trainer. My link is there if you want to follow me. I'm trying to grab that a little bit more. We also are joined by two others. Michelle, did you want to go ahead and join since you're actually there on the left?
Sure. I'm Michelle Kendrick. I'm a program coordinator here at eMINTS. I have been with eMINTS for 22 years. Prior to that, I taught high school biology. Amber?
And I'm Amber Ernst. I was a former elementary school teacher. I joined eMINTS in January of last year.
Very good. If you follow us down to slide 4, if you're joining us on the slides, the webinar series is trying to restore the connection between all of the different students and teachers that have kind of like lost those bonds of communication and possibly the emotion, the passion that they have for some of the things that are there so that we can bring us all together again. So as it says there, help us all reignite our passion for learning and teaching. So we hope that these tools help you not only reconnect, but also reconnect with us as we kind of share through that. Michelle is going to share originally the design through inquiry framework to be able to walk us through how we're going to organize the rest of the presentation based on going through pretty much a 5E+1, which includes the engineering aspects, but I'll let her tell you more about that.
Here at eMINTS, we've been working with around 60 schools with a Supporting Effective Educator Development grant from the Federal Department of Education. And the focus of that grant has been to apply engineering design across the curriculum in an interdisciplinary and place-based approach. As we started into that process, we took a look at a lot of different engineering models, and we decided to create one that involved the 5 E's. And if you know much about eMINTS, that makes perfect sense because we are all about inquiry. So our model uses inquiry as a guiding principle. It collects student questions, student research, and increases student voice in the design process. If you click on Amber, the DTI poster, that will show you our model that we developed. And you're free to use this poster. So you'll notice that we have the 5 E's plus 1, which is the engineer. So in Engage, we identify a problem, we can make connections for student learning. We learn about the problem from those affected by it. So we develop empathy for our users. Then we explore, so students ask questions about the problem. What do we need to know? What do we know about this problem? And then they seek to answer those questions through research, through interviews, through surveys, through all kinds of different methods. They make sure their problem is narrowed to one that's feasible, and then they start to brainstorm solutions. Then they pick and engineer the one best solution and then design a prototype or model of that solution. A lot of the solutions that we're doing will be plans or processes versus a actual physical thing, and some of them are actual physical things. A key piece is that we are gathering and analyzing data in order to inform the iteration of that design. So when we've built something, we test it, we collect the data, and we iterate it and define it and refine it. Then we present this to an audience, defend using scientific argumentation, claims, evidence, reasoning, and then describe their learning using the terminology of the subject area that we're in. And then elaborate, we reflect, and we think about how we're going to apply our learning to a new situation. So thinking about how this process helped us solve problems, and then evaluate runs throughout, as it always does in any kind of learning situation. Okay, Amber, you can go back to the slide. There's also a link there to some resources that you could go use. We don't have to open that, but the DTI framework has resources to lead you through that process. Okay, next slide. So as we did this, we wanted to do some key things. And one of them is involve students in identifying and narrowing a problem. And the reason this is important is because when students go out into the real world, they are faced with problems. Most engineering curriculum, if you look at it, gives students the design. So they say design a hovercraft, make it, they give the criteria, they give the restraints, but they frame for students what it is they're supposed to do or solve. When really in the real world, students have to, or workers have to identify and grapple with and narrow and understand problems. And so that became our focus. And we're doing that in a place-based approach, which means we're having students identify problems that they, in their world, in their school community, and in their city or town or outside community. And we want them to do problems that are really real and really real to them. A few key things as you go through a design process is to remember you've got to grapple with a problem. You don't jump immediately to a solution. So, for example, saying we want to build a ramp out of our school so that students can go to our ag building and be accessible to that building so everyone has access to it is a solution. Making our school more accessible is the problem. So you have to be careful that you're opening it up to multiple solutions. Okay, data collection is essential, iteration is essential. We worked with a professor at the University of Missouri as we were first starting, and he said, if you don't collect data and iterate, you can be crafting. So if you're having your students build those bridges like they do, and they just build the bridge, then it's just like a little craft project. You have to collect data, use that data to iterate. And also engaging students in scientific argumentation we use the claims evidence reasoning approach. Okay, next slide. So in order to focus our problems in a place-based approach, we helped students do this by providing a few tools. And one of those is the school community asset inventory. So that focuses on what happens in your school with people, and then with students, with the community, and then also just the physical aspects of the school. We have had schools focus on things like having a healthy student body, and they created a healthy walking path. We've had them focus on things like, gosh, if I can remember some, I'll think of them in a second. Students had a space that they were given by the city, and the city wanted a healthy thing for their school. So they developed a Frisbee golf course in that space. So there's been a lot of different things that they've done. So I was thinking, post in the chat, do you have ideas for problems at your school? So if you're looking from a perspective of students, perspective of parents and community, the perspective of your teachers, and also Just looking at your assets that you have. So somebody post in the chat an idea or 2 or 3 that you have for a problem at your school. We'll take a minute to do that. So some problems that we've seen and some that are in schools, how can we conserve our non-renewable resources? Why might recess be important for elementary students, and how can we modify our schedule that allows for more rest time? So have to be careful that we're not creeping into that solution piece. So how can we make time for recess? Yeah. How do I use space and resources effectively to build a community garden? The locker rooms are not accessible. The buddy pack program is going away. The funding's gone. What can we do to help students who need food resources? How can we reduce waste in our cafeteria or our classrooms? And we've had schools deal with all these kind of problems. Another great tool for finding a problem is the problem checklist, which is linked there. And if you want to take a look at that later, you can. So that kind of helps you know, do I have a good problem that will work for kids? Okay, Amber, next slide.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing all those resources, getting us started, kicking off how we can find problems. So thinking about moving into the rest of the engage phase, we're learning about a problem, we're beginning to empathize, or we're still kind of in that process as well. I wanted to share a resource that I found just today, and I thought it was excellent, and I was so excited to share it this evening about design thinking. So this is on Class Dojo. You might know this or use this as a parent for a whole set of other resources, but you don't have to have a teacher account or a student account to access this part of their website, which is fantastic. It's called Conundrums. So it's kind of like smaller problems, and it gets those like problem solving muscles kind of thinking and going. So really what it is, it's a hub of really short videos. I saw about 20 or 25 on that link, so a good portion. They're only 90 seconds long, and they each have like a worksheet or discussion questions that come right after. So it's building in already a problem. You can split students into groups and work on the different solutions that it gives. You can talk about pros and cons and a lot of the design thinking process with just these really short videos. And to get into design thinking, that's helping build the community to foster this in your classroom. I love that the videos, while they're a little bit probably more elementary focused, the basis of them really could apply to many different situations. And they were not, the one I was watching today was about a bridge, and it was a ferry. So different ways that they could get over the water, and they were thinking about cost and things that we'll get into a little bit later about criteria and constraints and things like that. But I loved this was just a bite-sized version of how you could do this in your classroom. So these videos are really short, which was fantastic. You can use them to start that process with your students. I thought this was a really great resource. And again, one of the other things that I loved about it was you don't have to be a teacher or student or have an account to access this part of their website. So I thought it was a really great offering and a way to start design thinking, especially if you're working with younger students. So that was, again, we're talking about identifying the problem, starting there. When we're thinking about how do we bring these ideas together, maybe empathize a little bit more. Another one of the tools that I love to use in the engage phase is a Google Jamboard. So you can think of this kind of like a whiteboard, or if you have like the anchor chart paper that you stick on the wall, this is a great way to collaborate, whether it's with students that are in different classes that are able to see each other's answers, students that are in different schools that are able to collaborate, teachers. There's a lot of ways that you can use Google Jamboard, but when you're thinking about brainstorming just about problems in your school or community, this is an example of how you can do it. So what Jamboard is, like I said, it's a really blank canvas, and you can see on the left side here kind of the toolbar of things that you can add. So it might be text or a post-it. We can change the color of those. We can highlight things or use dots if we need to come to consensus and vote, which is really fantastic. So a lot of manipulative pieces and a really variety of ways you can use it. So to talk just a little bit more about the picture you see here, this was a school that was coming up with what problems do we have, or how are we going to use design thinking in one of the trainings they were doing. So each color represented a person, and then they also took this and sorted some of their ideas. So taking it a step further, they're collaborating and then using those ideas and seeing where did we overlap, using the dots to see what we might vote on. So there's a lot of ways that Jamboard can be used to kind of build and engage students in that beginning phase. A lot of building connections, really easy to collaborate. So since this is a Google product, it's very easy to share, very easy to add slides up at the top. It's really a blank canvas and fantastic for a lot of different uses. Before I talk about this one, between Michelle's ideas, Jamboard, the Conundrums, which one of those do you think would work really great for one of the problems that we had just addressed earlier? Which one kind of stuck out to you so far? And I'll give you guys just a minute if you want to answer in the chat, or you can like somebody's, use those emojis now as well. And then we'll jump into the next phase. So we had identifying a problem, that asset inventory. We shared about really short videos, and then Jamboard as well. Oh, I did want to mention too, like Michelle noted earlier, one of the key pieces about design thinking was giving students voice, which I wanted to note that Jamboard was a really great way to do that, because each student has the opportunity to share their thinking here. And it's in a way that's not maybe when you're in person, if you're voting or doing different things, especially when we're working with middle school students, that might not be the best way to get everybody's opinion and ideas in the same place. So this is also a great way to collaborate. Okay, so I'm seeing some, they really like Conundrums. It would have been fun to start with them. You can go watch them. They're really great. It was having me thinking already, like, oh, okay. And thinking outside the box, like you said, is really great to start. And thank you for contributing, Brooke, about dots and images and voting. That's really important and helps collaborate. All right, so you can check and see if there's any other responses that come in that you want to look at. But next, I'm going to share about Mindmeister. After we have chosen a problem, we've empathized, we have built connections with our students, maybe done a little bit of research about it. We move into the explore phase, which is asking questions. We are narrowing down our problem and brainstorming solutions. So Jamboard might work for this as well. I wanted to share this mind mapping tool because it was incredibly easy to use. So I know this would be great for students. It had some really awesome templates up at the top. So you can see where it says like mind map or project plan. When you're thinking of using or building up like questioning strategies or questions or narrowing down your problem, it would be great to have this a central focus and then be able to branch out from there and capture all of these ideas in one place. And this just gives a little bit more organization. So this one, as opposed to Jamboard, will really show how those ideas are connected. When we're thinking about narrowing a problem, we can branch out to different topics and then take on the research or questions that are associated with them, which I think makes it great for students because, again, it's something collaborative. It's really easy to use. The website also has some great tutorials you can see that just walk you through exactly what to do, but it's very intuitive. So changing colors, changing text, adding things. I think you can really map out what your project looks like if you're using this with younger students, it's really great to see everything all together. And again, this is something that's great and collaborative because you can share it with other grade levels, other teachers, and things like that. So I wanted to make sure you saw that one today as well. And then we're going to jump into the next one. I'm going to pass it off to Nicholas.
Yeah, so I love the way that like students are collaborating and branching out and finding all of these ideas within the DTI framework. But after they get all of that spread out and after they get to that point, it's really hard for them to pull it almost back in and start itemizing out all of those different things and really find a strategy to come into that engineering and pull all that together. And as we look forward, I've kind of started thinking of this whole process as kind of like this big adventure that they go on together. And I think that this program really kind of captures that to be able to look at how they can manage tasks. On here, it's a little bit small on there, but they kind of have a little bit of a gamification aspect for these students potentially to be able to do depending on their age level. This does open it up to a community so that they can grow beyond that after they're done with moving on past potentially their pre-K through 12 experience and they go into more of a collegiate level. You'll see that these management of habits, these daily routines, and these to-dos can actually be shared between each other. They can be assigned, they can be tracked, they can show motivations, but really what it does is it exemplifies how large, big projects can be broken down into smaller like side quests so that each one of them can actually accomplish their goals and itemize it all out. So this engineering process that we have is not only about going through and having a collection of ideas, but finding ways to address the problem so they can engineer something that is within the bounds and realistic. The actual thing that I think most reflects all of this engineering process is that when they're all said and done, right, they get to look back at their progress. They get to kind of reevaluate how far they've come, even if they don't get to that point to where they are actually able to complete it all the way through. As Michelle was saying at the very beginning, some of these projects extend beyond the process because they have gatekeepers, they have certain people to convince in general. Sometimes they don't have a consensus and some of them go out on other ways. So at the very end, they're like, I really love doing that project. It wraps up and they immediately transition and they start applying this DTI framework to other problems that are not necessarily bound by the actual content of the course. This allows them to be able to have those other adventures as well, and then go back and look at it and say, oh, these are the ideas that we wanted to revisit. Because really what it comes down to being is that all of these engineering things, they don't have to necessarily be an actual artifact at the very end. It can be a plan that they continue to iterate, they continue on with and keep going so that it improves every single time. But if they do get to that point, if they do get to a point where they have something big to present, or they have that process and they have to go to a gatekeeper and say, hey, we need the money to be able to go through that, then they have this presentation almost barrier that they have to, or a celebration. So Amber has a great way to be able to let them kind of share that and move them to another type of aspect of not only being able to manage the process, but also be able to share it with other people.
All right, I just wanted to mention before we moved on, Nicholas, that I think your categories on the right were fantastic and they would motivate a lot of students. That I think they're really great. When we move on to explain, so we now might have a problem, we've narrowed it down, we've engineered different types of solutions, we've iterated, we've collected data or done all those parts, because there's a lot of different tools we can use and we really want to focus on, or just have time to focus on some of them today. We can use Canva to present and explain our solution to an authentic audience. Maybe you can drop in the chat if you've used Canva before, or if you have any special pieces that you like as well, we'll make sure to mention, because Canva is a powerhouse for graphic design and in video and quite a few things now. So it's really great and I want to make sure you guys know about it. So the first thing that I love about Canva is it's free for education. So when you're signing up with your teacher account, you're getting a great amount of quality content for free. So it's access to a lot more pieces. there's a whole side that you can share with students projects when you're building presentations together. So for the design cycle, it might be using any of their templates. So this is just a screenshot of their templates, but you can type in presentations. You can start one. It is collaborative, so you can build things together. You can use, bring in your school colors and your school mascot. You can share it online. You can record it. Canva has quite a few, it's really got quite a bit for education. There's a lot on the teacher side too, when you have that free account that you can use. But as far as DTI goes, when you're building things together, it's a great place to start. I think it's very intuitive, and it will build some of the creativity as well. If you have students that are working on a project and want to showcase that, like we mentioned earlier, it might be great if you had, I didn't see one in here, but we could easily build one, a template for claims evidence reasoning. So you can build that right into your presentation. I did search for it though. I was checking. So that might need to be added, but it's really great that they have things to take, make your own, and use right away. It's very easy to present, export. I was going to check in the chat if there's anything else because Canva can do quite a few things. If there's anything else I wanted to say about it. Yeah, lots of templates for teachers. Very, very awesome. Great for presentations. Now there's tons of ways you can animate. There's students like that as well. A lot of new updates, and they come in pretty frequently. There were some new ones I was finding out about today with pictures and things like that. But as far as DTI goes, Canva is great to build presentations, free for teachers. You get a lot of content, and your students can use it to build things as well.
All right, so after you get to that process, like it kind of breaks for a second, and the students kind of step back and go, yes. But the only thing is that that's not the first time that they're going to come to a problem that's even remotely similar to that. Sometimes the problem immediately changes or it becomes outdated again. So I want to ask, as far as becoming adult, the habit tracker is one thing. You can go through all those processes and you gamify it all. But then you kind of have this other serious aspect of actually managing your own class. Now, students can also do this. And it's a very, very powerful tool. But within this, you almost look at it from the teacher's perspective in this respect of how would you help your students manage their projects. And you could do this in this large thing called Notion. It's been around for a little bit. And what it is highly customizable. So every single time you go in, from the little bitty icon colors to banners, you can get lost in all this customization. So I want to know, just looking at the chat, what are some problems that you see typically of breaking down your own stuff into pieces that doesn't actually seem like there's already a way to do that? Because I guarantee as we go through, somebody's tried to solve that problem and made something to either have for free or sell, but we'll get to that later on. So how do you actually feel about your projects that you would actually break down for you or your students as you follow through?
Would you mind repeating that one more time too, Nicholas?
Sure. The only thing I'm saying is, as far as, is there things that you think would be a better way to handle some of the teaching strategies that you already use to break them down into smaller pieces? For example, I go through a process of making huge monsters, huge problems, and then I have to chunk them all out. And once I get them all down, I revise that piece of paper over and over again. And all I do is make lists. So I'm just kind of thinking, what would you use a tool like this to be able to break down a problem that you see? So what I'm getting at is that what these do is function like databases that communicate to one another. So you can plan out a calendar and you can collaborate with another individual, whether or not it be part of your department or whether or not it be part of your otherwise team. And you can all see that in multiple different versions to stack them in different ways so that you can see what each other is teaching and sort them with filters to be able to see that. You can also assign it. And the coolest thing about it to me is that the transparency exists. At the very end, we hold, as I've heard that said, our cards very, very close to our chest. But at some points in time, you can make this available to anybody that's actually there, including your students. So at the very end, the things that you've had hidden for a very long time that you've created now gives them organizational strategies so they can see it almost like your notes behind the scenes. You kind of pull back that curtain and say, listen, this is how I'm teaching it to you. You can now follow along in a different way. There's all kinds of embedded documents that you can put in it, links, PDFs, Google integration. There is a massive amount of content that you can also dump into this and make it really, really accessible. And to get into that, as we were talking about with Canva, there is a significant amount of customization. So on slide 14, as we wrap to get to the end, there are templates galore. And as I mentioned, there are multiple ones that are free. There are also multiple ones that people have made to be able to sell, and they have everything under the sun. Instead of actually looking at how quizzes are actually made and communicate, studying, some of these are based on really interesting new ideas. But the coolest part about it is, as we said before, it does have that AI aspect that is very, very hot right now built in. And as you do this, it kind of generates possibly some ideas for you to follow through on. And it helps you to kind of plan so that you can get out of the way of retyping everything over and over again and only thinking for, what you're seeing, but otherwise what other problems or steps that you might be missing. One of these things is students. They have a whole thing dedicated to just students, and you can click that free button and see free for students, and they can associate themselves with that as well. You can control the teams, you can create certain aspects. And again, once they're graduated, it turns them loose to be able to use this tool for college and so on and so forth, or other tech schools, or even just life as they try to plan out and share to-do lists that do more than just assign, your spouse or significant other some other thing to do. You can say, wait a minute, hold on a second. If I sort all these, this is on here 3 times. I don't want to do it 3 times. That's not a common thing. My actual point is that after you get through all of this, the possibilities are endless to be able to link all this together, and it becomes almost too powerful. And one of the coolest things about it is that since this is so widespread, and if you're not actually digging into it yet, there are ways to simplify it. It becomes overwhelming, and then you can reduce it down as much as you need to, so you can honestly just write or just look at the to-do list so you don't get overwhelmed with all the buttons on the side. So as we go throughout and we do this, there are multiple different ways that you can connect with everybody around you through some of these tools to be able to go through and look at whether or not it be going through the process and empathizing with a bunch of different people that also share common problems, but looking at how you can help them to solve theirs. And then you go all the way through to collaborating with each other to be able to solve those problems, including some of the tools that we've used, whether or not it be mind mapping, whether or not it be actually polling each other and trying to vote with this Jamboard post-it type of idea, whether or not it just be that we try to manage everybody's tasks and try to get them to collaborate so everybody's on the same page. And really what it comes down to being is making sure that we're all connected. As we get isolated in our own silos, as we get partitioned into our own content areas or just spread out geographically, we kind of want to still have that theme of reconnecting with everybody.